When we hear the parable of the talents, I think one of the things that my mind immediately goes to is an invitation by Christ to pour ourselves into whatever vocation it is that God has given to us. Vocation meaning a call. Been with our young people on NCYC, the National Catholic Youth Conference. I returned to pick them up and shuttle them home this evening. But it's been a blessed time. And a lot of times we hear a lot, we've been hearing a lot from a lot of great speakers about the notion of vocation. This is a month where we are particularly paying attention to this idea of vocation because we need that reminder all the time. This idea of vocation, call that we're given. And I think that one of the things, again, that we hear in tonight's gospel is about that very notion. We're all given gifts, different amounts of gifts from God. And our call is to use them, to put them to work, right? And I love how it's this idea that these people, the two that do the right thing, take the gift and they go out and they work. They use their hands, they trade, they engage other people. They're out doing it. Pope Francis told us when we were at World Youth Day about last summer, he said in his homily, he mentioned at the main homily, he said, encouraging the young people to go out into the world and make a mess. Make a mess. Now, what does that mean, right? That could be bad. My mom certainly thought so. Right, make a mess in the sense of go out into the world and engage the world and don't worry so much about what you're supposed to say or techniques or tricks or how it is that you're supposed to. We've been hearing all these great speakers in Indianapolis, the best in the country, the Christophanics and the bishops and the archbishops and all these people who have been given these amazing talents at speaking, and there's books out there and YouTube videos and all these things, right? And that's in one sense that's obviously a great blessing to have all of that stuff at our disposal. youonformed.org, which we have a subscription to, can listen to the best speakers, some of the best speakers in the history of the church. And again, that's great. That has helped me so much in my life, in my priesthood and before priesthood, listening to talks and videos and reading books by great people, great saints. But the one problem with that, the one thing that I think that can hurt us is that we think, well, if I can't speak like that, then I shouldn't speak at all. If I don't know how to handle this particular situation, or if I haven't been trained in counseling, then I should never talk to or help someone because I might make a mess. I shouldn't speak up because if I don't know exactly what to say, or what if this person says that, or I'm not sure if I should stand up and defend my faith when it's being attacked in this particular situation. It doesn't matter, just pour yourself in is the call that Jesus is giving to us. He doesn't say go learn the tricks and all the techniques before doing it. He just says just pour in. Pope Francis, make a mess. In fact, Father Meyer, obviously a great friend of mine, his reading a book Dynamic Catholic just published. He said it's been awesome. I hope that he gave me a free copy. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Make a mess. It's a beautiful image for I think what we're hearing in this gospel. And that's exactly what happened to the guy that didn't get it right. He was afraid. He hid it. He went and buried his talent in the ground because he was afraid that it might mess up, or he might do something wrong, or he might make somebody mad. In whatever small little social media ministry I've been doing in my priesthood, a lot of people will come to me and be like, hey, you just need to cancel that, because sometimes you say things that you shouldn't say, or you make somebody mad. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay. When I do, I don't do it. I don't go out looking to make people mad or say the wrong thing, and sometimes I do. We all do that. Right? I've said things as a priest, I've said things that are wrong that I needed to apologize for. I'm still glad that I'm out engaging the world, the culture, right? I think that's the call, pouring ourselves into our vocation and not hiding and burying what we've been given in the ground. out of fear because we don't know exactly what to do with it in every scenario and in every situation, and we don't have our doctorate in theology. I think another emphasis or another thing I'd like to think about with this idea of vocation, of pouring myself in, is if we don't give everything we have, this call of Jesus will not make sense. Jesus is saying the guy took 5 talents and he gave all 5 out. He used all 5. It didn't say the guy was given 5, he put 4 to work and hedged his bet and kept 1 for himself. He poured all that he had been given, or she. 5 and the 2, both of them gave everything that they had into the ministry, into the vocation, into what it was that they were doing. God doesn't say start at 80%. He says pour everything that you have into the vocation that you've been given. And until you do, it will not make sense. Christianity is not something that we can try by dipping our toe in. It won't work. You can't swim by dipping your toe in. We're meant to swim in the ocean of God's mercy, right? Pouring everything that we have into it. When we do that, when we pour everything we have into this vocation that we've been given, another thing to know is that it hurts. There's suffering involved. When you labor, when you give yourself away, the part of that is necessarily there will be pain and suffering involved in that. But I think something that we need to realize, again, constantly revisiting. I need to revisit it all the time myself. And this week has been good for that. I need the conferences as much as the youth did. But I was reading a novel recently talking about suffering. This old woman in this novel is dying. She's on her deathbed. And she's telling stories of her life to her granddaughter. And what happens is, in the midst of these stories, all the stories involve pain. And the granddaughter is like, Grandma, do you have any happy memories? Everything you're telling us right now is like about suffering. And she says, and this is a beautiful line from the grandmother that I think is so important. Now, as the author says this, now as she lay waiting for death, she seemed to take as much pleasure in recalling her suffering as her joys. I remember one time I was with my friends, right out of our freshman year in college, we somehow tricked up one of our parents into giving us a minivan, and we went out to Wyoming to climb the Middle Teton. It was in May, it was still cold and still snowy, we didn't really know what we were doing. And we got about halfway up the mountain, and it had taken us about 12 hours to get that high. And we realized all of a sudden a storm rolled in, we were exposed on the mountain, we were not in good shape, we had not acclimatized. I was the leader of the trip, and I got altitude sickness, started getting sick. We start hiking down, thunder, lightning roll in. It was a 24-hour day. We all lived. You know what we talk about every time we get together? That trip. How crazy was that? How bad did that hurt? Oh my gosh, we almost died. What were we thinking? We weren't thinking. What were our parents thinking? Right? All these things, we laugh about it. We share in because we suffered together. We experienced the pain together. We did that, and it's interesting how that's what we remember. That's what we celebrate. Sometimes the suffering that you're in the midst of right now in living your vocation, in pouring yourself into your vocation, the suffering that you're experiencing sometimes will down the road be the good stuff that you'll remember. It'll be those things. I see that in my mom and dad. We heard a beautiful reading about mothers and fathers and wives and husbands in the first reading, pouring themselves into their vocation. I saw this in my mom and dad. My mom and dad suffered greatly. We did not have much. And a lot of people helped in our community to help my mom and dad raise all 11 of us, use clothes and bring by food or Christmas gifts and things like that. I know it was hard for my mom and dad to accept that help. I know it was hard for them to not have the things that they wanted to have. All those things, I know now looking back on it, it was a hard thing for them. And this Thanksgiving, as with most Thanksgiving and most holidays, is payday for my mom and dad. Full house, grandkids everywhere, sons and daughters, everybody back. It worked out. And yet when we get together, you know what we talk about sometimes? The tough things that we went through together, the sufferings. So we're called to pour ourselves in. We're called to pour ourselves into our vocation. We're called to give everything that we have and to know that when we do that, we're going to experience suffering and that that's part of it and that's okay. God's with us in the midst of that. And the final thing that I'd like to end with is a challenge, because it's something else that I've seen recently and have brought to mind. I was watching a movie about a hero figure who had, it's a common theme in Westerns and a lot of other places. This hero figure was in his old age now. It was a kind of a sequel. And earlier in his life, he had a wife, and he knew his purpose, and he knew his vocation, and he knew what he was supposed to do to be the hero, and he had an identity. He had a vocation. But the wife died. He started losing some of his strength. He started losing some of his things. And now, as with most of these characters, he's surrounded and living in, alcoholism and just sort of turned in on himself because his vocation he was no longer, it didn't make sense to him. He wasn't living it. And here's my whole point. Sometimes with vocation, it's also important for us to remember that this isn't just something that we think about when we're teenagers. There's another act to the play of your life. If you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I had a vocation once, you're wrong. You have a vocation right now. You have a vocation that God's calling you. He might be calling you to a new thing. There's a new act. My mom and dad, for many years, were living out that first reading as being parents to 11 children, and they still are. But they're changing vocations now and adjusting and switching, and there's slightly different characteristics of their lives, but they're still living out and pouring themselves into new things, new ways to serve. And it's beautiful for me to see that. I visited a woman in the nursing home this week who was 99. 99. And when I walked in, she had a big smile on her face, and she said, "Father, I'm 99. You know what I realized this week? All the answers are right here in this book." She held up the Bible. She's reading all the Matthew Kelly books, all the dynamic Catholic books. She's always reading. She's always talking. When I come in, she wants to chat. And there are other people who are a lot younger than her that I visit that have given up, or are tempted, or are really close to giving up. Wilma, who's 99, she knows she's in a different act of her life. But it's still important. It's a new vocation. Her new vocation is maybe almost one in her nursing home of being something like a religious sister, spending her time praying and falling deeply in love with God, even more so, devoting that one-on-one time. Right? She had a family and all those other things. It's beautiful to see. And I think a lot of times I see people both who are older and of all ages who wrestle with that. I knew my purpose. I don't have that purpose now, so now I'm going to give up. And I'm going to drink or watch soap operas, or I'm going to just turn in on myself because I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. Move to the next act. Find out what the new thing God is calling you to, because He calls all of us each day to new things. We pray that we may be able to hear that call and invest and make a mess with the talents that God's given to us, and are not the people who go and bury the gifts that God has given us in the ground and give up.